My name is Evelyn Mercer. I'm 66 years old. The evening had started the way I'd hoped: soft light, roasted chicken, a small table dressed with linen I'd ironed that morning. My daughter, Lydia, sat across from me, her husband, Mark, beside her. They'd brought a bottle of wine and the easy chatter of people who believe everything in their lives is running on schedule. I poured tea instead, old habit. We talked about nothing at first: the weather over the river, Mark's new project, her mother-in-law's upcoming cruise. I nodded where I was supposed to, smiling when Lydia described the villa in Provence they'd rented for the summer. It was only when I mentioned the overdue electric bill for the upstairs unit that her tone shifted. "It's the third time this year," I added, keeping my voice even. "It's not much," I said, trying to keep it light. "Just last month's balance." Lydia set down her fork. "Mom, can we not talk about money during dinner?" "It's just the light bill, sweetheart. I already covered it, but—" She interrupted me, voice sharp enough to cut through the hum of the ceiling fan. "Compared to my mother-in-law, you're nothing." The room went silent. The scent of thyme and lemon hung heavy in the air. Mark froze, his hand halfway to his glass. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her for the first time in months. The expensive earrings, the impatience in her eyes, the way she was already checking her phone as if to end the moment faster. I set my fork down carefully beside the plate. "Perfect," I said quietly. "Then tell your mother-in-law to pay the rent for this house." Mark's head snapped up. Lydia blinked, as if the words didn't belong to me. For once, I didn't fill the silence. I let it sit there between us, clear as glass. When they left an hour later, the house felt larger than before, emptier, yes, but also mine again. I gathered the dishes, stacked them by the sink, and turned off the porch light. Upstairs, their windows were still glowing. The morning after that dinner, the house felt strangely alive. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the pipes reminded me how long this place had carried us. I made tea and stood by the kitchen window, watching the moss sway from the live oaks along the street. This house had been Thomas's dream. He was a carpenter's steady hands, quiet humor, the kind of man who built things to last. When he died, I was 37, and the upstairs was nothing but beams and dust. I remember sitting on the steps with Lydia asleep in my lap, promising him I'd finish it someday. I kept that promise, though it took years. Every summer break, I painted walls, patched plaster, and saved from my teaching paycheck. I rented the upstairs to college students for a while, just enough to keep the mortgage steady. When Lydia married Mark, they were looking for a place near the river, and it felt right to offer it. "Just until you get settled," I'd said. The same words I'd told every tenant before them, only this time, I never asked for rent. 5 years have passed since then. The mortgage is gone now, but the taxes keep climbing. The porch rail needs new boards. The roof leaks near the back room. I fix what I can, pay what I must, and tell myself it's fine. It's family. Still, sometimes when I see the upstairs lights through the magnolia branches, I think of the promise I made on those unfinished stairs to build a home that would stand long after the people inside forgot how much it cost. The kettle clicked off behind me. I poured another cup of tea, set it beside the stack of unpaid repair bills, and whispered to the quiet house, "We've been patient long enough." Chapter 3, The Other Woman's Shadow. It started subtly, the way most things do before they cut deep. Lydia began dropping Diane Whitford's name into conversation as easily as breathing. "Mom, Diane says Mark and I should invest in real estate now." Or, "Diane knows the best interior designer in Hilton Head." Each mention carried a shine of approval I couldn't give her, not the kind that came wrapped in money and polish. The first time I met Diane, it was at Lydia's birthday dinner. She arrived in pearls, her perfume filling the room before her voice did. Every gesture was deliberate, the laugh, the tilt of her chin, the way she called Lydia sweetheart, as if the rest of us were the help. I brought a lemon cake I'd baked from scratch. She sent one from a boutique bakery, just in case. By dessert, it was clear which cake everyone wanted a picture of. After that night, Lydia's calls became shorter. When she did visit, her stories revolved around Diane's charity events, her yacht trips, her connections. I smiled when she spoke, but part of me shrank each time she compared without even realizing she was comparing. It wasn't jealousy. Not really. I didn't want Diane's life. I just wanted to be seen by my own daughter with the same light in her eyes she saved for that woman. But money casts long shadows. And Diane Whitford knew how to stand perfectly in the center of hers. When Lydia showed me photos from their summer vacation, the grand staircase, the beach house veranda, the china set Diane had let them borrow, she said it with pride, as if wealth itself were a kind of inheritance. I told her the pictures were lovely. She didn't notice my hands trembling as I passed the phone back. Later that evening, when the house grew quiet again, I walked past the mirror in the hallway and caught my reflection plain, tired, a little faded around the edges. I thought of Diane's perfect pearls, her perfect tone, and wondered when my daughter had started mistaking that for love. That night, I couldn't sleep. The words from the dinner table kept circling back, sharper each time they passed through my mind. I got up, slipped on my robe, and walked to the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. The hinges creaked softly as I lifted the lid. The smell of cedar and old paper rose up, the scent of years I'd tried to keep closed. Inside were the pieces of a life I'd built with steady hands, Thomas's work gloves, a faded photograph of Lydia on her first day of school, a folder labeled property documents. I hadn't touched that folder in over a decade. My fingers trembled as I pulled it free. The papers were still there, perfectly preserved, the deed, the title, the final mortgage statement marked paid in full. My name stood alone at the bottom, Evelyn Mercer, no cosigners, no conditions. I sat on the floor, the folder open across my knees, and let the quiet of the house settle around me. For the first time in years, I saw this home not as a burden, but as proof of every double shift, every sacrifice, every choice I'd made when no one else was watching. Upstairs, a faint laugh echoed Lydia's voice through the floorboards, distant but clear. I closed the folder gently, smoothed its edges, and placed it back in the chest. I didn't feel angry anymore, just awake. When I returned to bed, the house seemed to breathe with me, the walls, the floors, the memories steady and alive, as if they'd been waiting all along for me to remember who they belonged to. 3 days passed before Lydia came back. She didn't call first, she never did. Just appeared at the door in her tailored blazer, holding her phone like a shield. Mark followed a few steps behind, quiet as always. I was trimming hydrangeas on the porch when she said, too brightly, "Mom, can we talk inside? It's about something exciting." I wiped my hands on my apron and led them to the kitchen. The air smelled faintly of lemon oil and tea. Lydia set her phone on the table, pulling up a slideshow of glossy photos, a coffee shop. Clean and minimalist, full of sunlight. "It's a family investment," she said. "We just need a small loan to get it started. Diane said she might contribute later, but we need upfront capital first. Only $50,000. You'd get it back." Obviously, her voice was honey over stone. I listened, nodding, though the words barely reached me. I thought of the mortgage papers in my chest, my name alone at the bottom. When she finished, I said quietly, "50,000 is a lot. Lydia, not if you think long-term," she said, smiling as if I were the child now. "It's for us, Mom, for family." Mark cleared his throat. "It could be great exposure for us both. The upstairs apartment could even be a tax write-off." I folded my hands on the table. Exposure. I repeated. Interesting choice of word. Lydia frowned. What do you mean? I looked at her. At the diamond on her hand. The calm confidence of someone certain the world owed her grace. You said something the other night, I began, about your mother-in-law. She rolled her eyes. Mom, I was tired compared to her. I'm nothing. Remember, I said it softly, not as accusation, but as record. So, if she's the one who matters, then she can pay the rent for this house. Lydia blinked, startled, then laughed like she hadn't heard me right. Mom, don't be dramatic. I reached for the folder I'd prepared, the lease printed and dated. This isn't drama, it's business. I'm setting fair rent for the upstairs unit the same I'd charge anyone else. Mark leaned forward, voice uneven. Wait, you're serious? Yes, I said. The roof has to respect itself too. For a moment. No one spoke. The refrigerator hummed. The ceiling fan clicked softly above us. Lydia's face shifted confusion, then disbelief, then a flash of fear she tried to hide. I can't believe you'd do this, she said, voice trembling. To your own daughter. I stood, gathering the teacups that had gone cold. You stopped being just my daughter when you started treating me like a convenience. Mark reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The silence between us felt final. As they left, the sunlight from the window hit the folder still open on the table. The paper gleamed white against the wood. Clean and steady, a quiet kind of justice that didn't need to raise its voice. By morning, the storm had already started. My phone buzzed nonstop on the kitchen counter, the screen lighting up with message after message from the family group chat. Lydia's name was at the top, her words written in that polished, performative tone she used when she wanted sympathy. Mom's evicting us. Can you believe it? After everything we've done for her. A few seconds later came the replies. Aunts, cousins, old family friends who hadn't visited in years suddenly finding their outrage. Evelyn, how could you? She's your only child. Money really changes people. Someone added a sad face emoji. Someone else mentioned church, forgiveness, remembering what family means. I stood at the sink, watching the messages multiply, each one twisting the story a little further from the truth. Lydia had always known how to use words, how to make herself the center of every wound. I didn't answer. Not a single one. Instead, I took screenshots. Every message, every accusation. I saved them all to a folder on my desktop labeled receipts. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity proof of how quickly love can turn into theater when there's an audience. Outside, the morning light had turned soft and gold. I stepped into the garden, the air heavy with the scent of rosemary and rain-soaked earth. The noise from my phone faded behind me, muffled by distance. I ran my hands along the hydrangeas, trimming what was overgrown, clearing what was dead. I'd spent most of my life filling silences, trying to make peace before anyone asked for it. But that day, I let the quiet stand. It was heavier than their noise, steadier too. When I finally looked back toward the house, the phone still flashing inside, I realized how peaceful the world was when you stopped answering to guilt. The mediation office was tucked between a dental clinic and a thrift store, the kind of neutral ground where people came to untangle small wars without drawing blood. The counselor, a soft-spoken man in his 50s named Mr. Callahan, welcomed us with a polite smile and 2 cups of coffee. Lydia didn't touch hers. She sat across from me in a pressed beige suit, her arms folded tight. Mark lingered beside her, eyes downcast. A man trying to disappear between 2 storms. Let's start with why we're here. Mr. Callahan said gently. Lydia leaned forward, her voice smooth but trembling at the edges. My mother's decided to start charging us rent, out of nowhere. We've lived there for years, helping with the house, supporting her emotionally, doing everything as a family, It's not fair. Her tone was rehearsed, part logic, part injury. She always knew how to sound like the reasonable one. Mr. Callahan turned to me. Mrs. Mercer. I placed a small folder on the table, opening it with deliberate calm. Inside were copies of property taxes, repair invoices, and utility statements. I've paid every bill for that house since the day we moved in. Every repair, every winter storm, every new appliance. I didn't look at Lydia as I spoke. This isn't about punishment. It's about balance, about remembering this isn't free. Nothing is. Lydia gave a brittle laugh. Balance, you're my mother. Mothers don't charge rent. I met her eyes, then not angry, not defensive. Mothers also deserve respect. I'm not asking for luxury. I'm asking to be treated like my roof matters. The room went still. Even Mr. Callahan's pen stopped moving. For a long moment, no one spoke. Lydia's mouth tightened. Her gaze flickered toward the folder, then away. Mark shifted, clearing his throat as if the silence itself had weight. When we left the office, the sun was setting over Savannah. The sky streaked with gold and gray. Lydia walked ahead, her heels sharp against the pavement. I stayed behind, feeling neither triumphant nor broken, only steady, like something inside me had finally settled back into place. Before mediation, I sent a 30-day notice to quit by certified mail and kept the receipt. The courthouse smelled faintly of paper and floor polish, that sterile blend of bureaucracy and consequence. I sat on a wooden bench outside room 312, hands clasped around my purse, watching dust float through a shaft of morning light. My name was printed neatly on the docket. Evelyn Mercer versus Lydia Whitford. It looked wrong on paper, cold, clinical, as if we were strangers. Lydia arrived late, sunglasses hiding her eyes, Mark trailing behind her. They didn't speak to me. She wore one of her sharp suits, but the confidence that used to fill her like perfume was gone. When the clerk called our case, I rose, steady but hollow. Inside, the room was small and echoing. The judge, a woman with gray hair pulled tight in a bun, adjusted her glasses and scanned the documents I'd filed: the deed, the lease, the unanswered letters. My folder looked so thin on her bench. Thin, but complete. Mrs. Mercer, the judge began. You're seeking possession in a dispossessory action after proper notice to quit. Yes. Your Honor. My voice came out calm, practiced. I tried to resolve this privately. They refused. Lydia leaned forward, her tone brittle. Refused. She blindsided us. My husband and I have lived in that home for years. We helped her emotionally, financially. Financially, the judge interrupted. Do you have documentation of that assistance? They are tenants at will, I said. No written lease. 5 years of rent-free occupancy. Utilities and taxes paid solely by me. Lydia hesitated. It wasn't about documentation. It was family. Mark shifted uncomfortably, eyes on the floor. I didn't move. The judge turned back to me. Mrs. Mercer, do you have receipts or proof of ownership? I handed her the folder. Everything's in my name, mortgage-free since 2001. I've paid all taxes, maintenance, and utilities. No contributions were made by the defendants. The judge flipped through the pages, nodding once. Noted. The silence that followed stretched until Lydia's composure cracked. You're ruining our family, she burst out, her voice shaking. You're doing this to your own daughter. I looked at her, my child, grown and still so young in all the wrong ways. No, I said softly. I just stopped paying for a family that forgot me. The words landed like the closing of a door. The judge straightened. The court recognizes Mrs. Mercer as the lawful owner. Possession is awarded to Mrs. Mercer. Defendants have 30 days to vacate. A writ of possession may issue thereafter. The gavel struck once, not loud, but final. Outside. The air felt sharper, cleaner. Lydia hurried past me, her heels clicking down the hallway, tears streaking through her makeup. Mark paused long enough to meet my eyes, a brief, silent acknowledgement of everything that had gone unsaid, then followed her. I walked out through the front steps into the Savannah sunlight. The city moved on, indifferent. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't tremble. I just breathed. For the first time in years. The house on Broughton Street was mine again, not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped asking to be seen. The house was quiet again. Weeks had passed since the court hearing, and the stillness no longer felt heavy. I'd rented the upstairs to a young nurse named Tessa, who worked long shifts at Memorial Hospital and liked to water the hydrangeas after sunset. She never stayed out late, never made much noise, and always left a note on the counter when she baked too many muffins. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch together, the air warm with the scent of rain and cut grass. She'd talk about her patients, the hard days, the small victories, and I'd listen, reminded that kindness didn't have to be loud to matter. One Sunday afternoon, while I was arranging flowers in the kitchen, there was a knock at the door. Lydia stood there, alone, holding a glass dish wrapped in foil, peach cobbler, the same recipe she'd once said was too heavy. She didn't step in right away. Her eyes looked tired, her voice smaller than I remembered. "I didn't know if you'd want to see me," she said. I nodded toward the kitchen. "Come in." "The kettle's on." We sat at the table, the same one where everything had unraveled weeks before. She kept her gaze on her hands as she spoke. "I'm sorry, Mom. I thought I was proving myself. I wanted to be more." I poured the tea, steam curling between us like a quiet bridge. "You were proving yourself," I said gently. "You just forgot who taught you to stand." She looked up then, tears in her eyes, but no defenses left. The silence between us wasn't sharp anymore. It just breathed. We ate the cobbler together in slow, careful bites. Outside, the garden shimmered in the afternoon light, and for the first time in a long while, the house on Broughton Street felt full, not of people, but of peace.